Nina, thank you for joining me again.
Thank you for having me, Sergio. Pleasure to be here again.
Always a pleasure to have you. Where do we start with this newsroom? What's hot?
What's hot is yesterday a hearing ended on online child safety in the US, and all the big tech people were summoned to answer questions on the child safety. To be exact, let me read this out. The topic was Big Tech and the Online Child Sexual Exploitation Crisis.
Yep.
So who was there? Linda Yaccarino from X, Shusi Chu, I'm pronouncing this right, of TikTok, exactly. Evan Spiegel of Snap, Mark Zuckerberg of Meta, and Jason Citron of Discord. And Mark Zuckerberg at some point apologized to the parents because parents are victims of child exploitation on social media were present at the hearing, and he apologized to the parents for what happened to their children. But then again, it's clear and obvious that Meta isn't taking any steps to undo or to do better and to protect children better.
Do you think there is a way to find a balance? They've been prioritizing growth over any potential concern all along. But I think at that stage, now they're investing clearly a lot of money in scanning content and going through content. And in fact, there's been reports that people that do provide that service are actually having their own mental health issues. My worry is that there was that report, an internal report. I'm not sure if it was mentioned. I didn't see the hearing or hear it, but there was an internal report at Meta that found that teenage girls were suffering mental health issues as a result of using Instagram. And that report was leaked or saw the light, and that was behind a piece of news we covered, you and I, in November, which is that lawsuit where 40 something states sued Meta, saying that Instagram and Facebook and so on, they manipulate our dopamine, the dopamine in our brain for all these like and follow and whatever features. And that
yes, and the endless scrolling. This is what they're designed for. I mean, adults have a hard time. It's so addictive.
Yeah, we talked about it, how addictive it is.
It's like a drug.
It's like a drug. So, and look, LinkedIn is very much the same. So it's professional, whatever you want, but it's very easy to be hooked on LinkedIn to simply lose track of priorities. At some point, I think we all need a dose of Cal Newport, because in the end, LinkedIn, it uses all of these resources. Of course, it's not used by people that are under 18, so we do not have these risks. And of course, the content is professional, whatever you want, but the methods to get people hooked.
I did too. It's
the use of notifications. By the way, I've disabled notifications on everything a long time ago, except for Signal and for Family Matters. But having notifications on a phone, and that is Apple's feature, and that is Apple's creation, and Apple themselves push you to enable notifications across many apps, and that's the beginning of the end, because you see all these teenagers, like my own, jumping on the latest message and all worried about their social standing and cyberbullying, whatever could come through that. And it's all part of the same game. So my point is, can we really have the social media we have today without all of these tricks? And if we kill them, and we kill notifications, and we kill, dopamine manipulation features and like features, and we do not let children access mobile phones or smartphones, what do we end up with? I'm all for it. The question is, can we have it? Can we have both things? Have our cake and eat it too?
That's an interesting question. I mean, in Florida, they're discussing banning social media access for children in the first place, like completely. I don't know if that is the way to go, because what happens when things are forbidden? People do it anyway secretly, or they come up with fake accounts. They state false birth dates to access and to register as an adult and whatever. So forbidding it completely, I don't think that's the way forward. But clearly there need to be a much better content moderation. The advertising needs to stop, and the endless scrolling needs to stop. I think, and maybe that goes against their business model, but then business model is harmful for children. It could be a solution like a time limitation per day that is installed, that can be installed on the phone itself, that can be, I mean, Google has this family thing.
Sure.
Apple has that, but only if everyone in the family is an Apple user. So, but maybe it can also come from the platforms directly, so that underage accounts can only be accessed for a certain period of time per day, which can be modified according to user needs and wants and parental allowances, but that there need to be some control, and that when that time is up, the app ends and cannot be accessed anymore on that day.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's a balance. You made a good point. If we forbid it entirely, Florida
Yeah,
style, then maybe you have social media dealers, like when we forbid alcohol, when it was forbidden in the US, and then you've got, hey,
like
do you want social
speakeasies
media?
for social media for
Speak
kids.
easy for social media. I mean, I know that when it comes to children, it's not funny at all, but the fact is that everybody's hooked on social media, again, including LinkedIn and all of these
Mm.
tricks, and everyone's playing the game and reading the books. In fact, there's a book called Hooked, which is much appreciated by product developers and so on because it gets more engagement. So if your model is advertising and you need eyeballs, then there's a clear conflict. So I'm not surprised that someone is advocating for it to be forbidden. But the one thing that I will keep insisting on is that we cannot complain while we buy smartphones for minors. I think parents have a responsibility as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, but they need to be made more aware of what the children are doing, and they need to be better educated of how they can prevent that and how they can monitor this better without exercising too much control. Again, there is the question of balancing. How much freedom do you allow your children to spend to time to spend, and how many websites can access by themselves, and what websites? But then at the same time, you don't want to control your children, or to cut your kids' freedom.
It's a difficult balance. And then remember all those people, there was, I don't know if it was in the Atlantic, there was that crazy mental health crisis that people were suffering as a result of being moderators for Meta, saying the things they saw, the things they had
Yeah,
to filter out, they drove them nuts because
yeah.
human nature is out of control in places like that. And having humans filtering it out is really a challenge. Anyway, let me move on because there's a few things. And let me tell you that since we last spoke, at the end of the year, Google reached a settlement, one of those large settlements that we do not see in Europe, not yet, in California, $5 billion over tracking users via, well, all sorts of pixels and systems while they were using the incognito mode in Chrome. So Chrome has an incognito, it's like a private browsing mode in Firefox. Incognito
Yeah.
mode, back in the day, it was called porn mode. So people trusted this thing to be super private, and they could still track people and keep a profile. an individual
Yeah.
profile for those that eventually Google can advertise to. So anyway, there's been this lawsuit. As you know, in Europe, we may start seeing them soon, since we have this collective redress directive that should have been implemented into national laws by last year. I think it was only the Dutch that did it on time, and I believe that's why in Holland you've got a couple of small actions. I can't remember now, but anyway, this is coming, and there you go, Chrome. What else do you have?
Yahoo was fined by the French data protection authority CNIL 10 million euros because about 20 cookies were preset when you entered the website, no matter if you rejected. They were just there without any control and without, again, the knowledge of the user in the first place.
Yeah. Well, that's no surprise, and the CNIL is on a roll with e-privacy related fines because they do not need to go again through the one-stop shop as you would through GDPR going to Ireland. It's e-privacy, so every country can use it, and the CNIL uses Article 82 of the French data protection law, which is the e-privacy directive. So same story we've seen so many times. I've got another one, which is Uber just got a fine, by the Dutch Data Protection Authority, 10 million euros over, in theory, if I understand it well, because I need to read it properly, the lack of a retention period for data about their drivers, and saying that the drivers were not really, so the privacy of their drivers was not really being respected. They were making like access requests, and those were not being honored in a timely way. So there you are. I think that's it for enforcement. Do you have anything on legal updates?
On legal updates, yeah, the EU Cyber Resilience Act was approved on the 1st of December. It means that hardware products with a digital component will have to follow a framework of cybersecurity requirements. This so far, I don't know, maybe I didn't understand it properly, but what happens until the 1st of December or until January 2027? Is there a transition period that offers more protection for consumers? Because this is what the act is there for in the first place, right? What happens and what does it mean for businesses? How would it impact their production? Do they have to change it all now? Do you know anything?
I have no idea. So I guess you have time to prepare yourself because we're talking about manufacturing.
Yeah.
So I need to build, and of course, then your software updates and so on. But these are like toys, Internet of Things. Everything connects to your phone through an app these days. And then they may have like social components. And anyway, so by giving them, 3 years, then you've got a chance to start thinking about these safeguards that may even affect some of the features that you offer. So I think it's, just a period for people to adapt to it. I don't think there's anything like a transitory requirement that meets them halfway.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so because businesses need to know and need to prepare and cannot change their production line like from one day to the next. It's just doesn't happen overnight. So yeah, let's keep an eye on that.
Yeah.
What else have you got?
Yeah. So if we move over to the other side of the pond, to the US. So in the US, California approved a new proposal to require browsers to respect the global privacy control, but they did not simply limit it to the global privacy control, which is the signal that we are familiar with. It's the most popular framework, so globalprivacycontrol.org, where you can, as a consumer, since data subjects in the US normally refer to them as consumers. So as a consumer, you would go into your browser and you would specify that you want to opt out of the sale of your personal data, as it's called in California, even if it's just going to be used for advertising. There's this concept of data selling, personal data selling. So you would opt out in your browser, and because it is an opt out, unlike the EU e-privacy directive, where you have an opt-in, then by doing it in your browser, every website has to honor your signal, and they cannot be asking you, do you want to accept cookies for advertising? Do you want to accept profiling? Because it's already done. You've done it in the browser. So in California now, they will force the browsers that do not yet honor the, for example, global privacy control signal, even though it's not limited to that specific standard, now they have to. So Brave already does. It already is compatible with it. DuckDuckGo, which has now its own browser as well, they do as well. And Firefox, of course, they support it as well. So at this point, Microsoft, so Edge, Safari, Apple, who doesn't support it yet, and Google Chrome would be finally forced to support it, which I think it's great progress for data subjects.
That's great news. Does that mean this is the start of the end of the cookie banner?
Exactly. That's why we had an interview here with Molly Martinson about a month ago, and we were talking about that, how the US could escape the annoying cookie banner by, even though most states have an opt-out instead of an opt-in, but by simply making the opt-out much easier.
The other questions that I have, like from a business perspective, this could be bad news, because how can you still gain insights about your customers when they all have disabled the tracking? You don't have your own cookie banner that is asking for a specific which cookies do you want to allow, and how can we offer you a better user experience?
The fact is that today, because we need to ask well, and it's an accept all versus reject all in Europe, after the EU cookie banner task force, so after Max Schrems, issued 101 complaints and all the things that we've seen, now you need to have a reject all on first layer. So how much of an audience does say yes, even though it's yes to only analytics? And as a result, can you really trust those reports and those metrics when only 20% of people say yes? Do the 20% that accept really represent 100% of your audience? Or are you really making really poor decisions because it's not really statistically significant? And it's even worse. Maybe people that do accept share something in common that makes them even less representative of those that do not accept. So what's the answer to that? And in fact, that's the last piece of news I wanted to share with you. In Spain, it's super related with this. In Spain, the Data Protection Authority just released new guidelines. And for the first time, they released guidelines for analytics, making analytical cookies exempt from consent, which I think is great news, because that means that if you only want to do analytics and this is aggregate data, never individualized profiles, only statistical data to maintain your website and your products. And if you do that, the Spanish agency has said you do not need consent. So there you have it. You could have a similar scenario to what we have in many places, where you can do analytics.
But they have added a time limitation that they can maximum be stored for 13 months.
Yes, very good. So 13 months is the maximum lifespan of the cookie. So when you set the cookie, you determine when it's going to die. So you need to set it to die within 13 months, which is the same lifespan that France allows in the CNIL analytical cookie guidelines, 13 months. But then you're allowed to keep historical data for, I believe, 2 years or just above 2 years. It's good news. Now you could go in Spain, and if you're not really going to do advertising or profile-based advertising, you just want to maintain your website, you can skip the annoying pop-up. You can do analytics. You do not integrate them with Google Ads or with a CRM. You have 100% of your audience in the reports. So your decisions are much more solid as well, and people are less annoyed.
There are lots of great alternatives for Google Analytics out there, more privacy-friendly ones that can help you out with that.
Exactly. And in fact, I need to add one more thing here. There were the EDPB guidelines back in November, I guess, extending the concept or updating the concept of access and storage in the terminal or in the computer or phone when it comes to the privacy directive, Article 5.3. So now we've been calling the cookie law, and the EDPB issued these very controversial set of guidelines saying that merely accessing the RAM, like the RAM of a computer by simply using URL parameters like UTM variables on the URL, that would amount to access, meaning that you do not need to use cookies anymore for consent to be required. You see, so it's like we're going in one direction at the EDPB, saying, well, even though cookies are supposed to die this year, don't worry, we still want you to throw all of these pop-ups and ask for consent no matter what you do. But at the same time, we see that the reality of business is another, and that even though that's the case, for analytics, no matter what you do, in this case it's for cookies now in Spain and France, you can get away with doing basic analytics at a high level. But as you said, Google Analytics is probably not going to be the tool. First, because it was born to be integrated with these. In fact, it wasn't born to be integrated. It was born as a standalone analytics tool, right? Urging and so on. But eventually it's evolved to merge into this, ocean of, or to dissolve into this ocean of Google products where it gives you more value when you can connect it with conversions and campaigns. And then there's the even more pressing data transfer issue, right? The Schrems issue. So as you said, there's tools that simply help you do analytics at a high level without consent, even without cookies, many of them. So simple analytics in the Netherlands. I think it's plausible I believe in Finland. CL metrics out of Spain. Anyway, Nina, I think we've had a good run over everything.
Thank you so much, Sergio, for bringing me up to speed.
Thank you. Okay, that's all for today. Please help us gain some visibility and grow in every sense of the word by hitting 5 stars on whichever podcast player you use if you think we deserve them. And remember that you will find some episode notes and links to our social channels on mastersofprivacy.com. Thank you for listening.